A key period of the Eagles offseason will begin when free agency starts on March 15th, and with the Eagles having a bunch of players set to hit the open market, it's just inevitable that they're going to end up losing a good portion of these players, and although it sucks, that's just the business of the NFL. But even so, there are some guys that are set to hit free agency that were on the Eagles roster last year that seemed like it was absolutely necessary to try to keep. And there was one player in particular that it seemed like the Eagles were going to do everything possible in their power to make sure he remained an Eagle for the long term. But just last night, we got some awful news regarding that situation, and we're going to talk all about it in this video today. But before we do that, make sure you go subscribe to the channel for more consistent Philadelphia Eagles and NFL coverage coming throughout the entire offseason. Free agency's coming up. We're going to do a bunch of videos, shorts, and potential live streams covering everything that happens, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of that. Now with that being said, let's get into the video. If you were to take a poll of all the Eagles fans and ask them, out of all the free agents the Eagles have this offseason, which is the one guy they think that the Eagles need to do everything possible to re-sign him, you would probably get a pretty consistent top answer of CJ Gardner-Johnson. And this is for many reasons. In his first season with the Eagles after being traded from the Saints, he became a fan favorite quickly, and he probably had the best season of his entire career, racking up a career high in tackles and tying the league lead in interceptions with 6. And CJ Gardner-Johnson is still young at 25 years old. He's extremely talented, and he showed clearly in his first year in Philly that he is made for this city. He's the perfect fit for a Philadelphia team. He brings the energy, he has the dog mentality, he's a great trash talker, and he impacts the game in ways that don't show up on the stat sheet. And he was just one of the heartbeats of that Eagles defense last year. And should the Eagles hang on to him moving down the road into the future, he could become a franchise cornerstone on the defensive side of the ball and stay here for years to come. Some people even believe that should he stay here for the long term, he could become an Eagles legend and an all-time great for the Eagles at that safety position, just like the ones before him, like Malcolm Jenkins and especially like Brian Dawkins, the greatest Eagles safety of all time. The fact that CJ Gardner-Johnson was even being mentioned in the same conversation as those two guys shows a lot about how good he is, who he is as a player, and how much Philadelphia loves and appreciates him. But obviously, when the Eagles made the trade with the Saints for CJ Gardner-Johnson, they did it understanding that he was going to hit free agency once the 2022-23 NFL season came to an end, and now we're at that point. And CJ Gardner-Johnson is set to hit free agency when that period begins on March 15th. But despite this, things were looking good for the prospect of CJ Gardner-Johnson staying with the Eagles in 2023. Just a couple weeks ago, a report came out from Adam Kaplan on the Inside the Birds podcast that said if the Philadelphia Eagles and CJ Gardner-Johnson weren't able to come to terms on a long-term deal, then the Eagles would go out and they would franchise tag CJ Gardner-Johnson. And Adam Kaplan specifically said they were not going to let him hit the open market. They were not going to let him leave this team. And I was so confident in this report that I decided to make an entire video discussing it. And basically the entire video I was just praising the Eagles, praising CJ Gardner-Johnson, and saying how happy I was that CJ Gardner-Johnson was going to be returning to the Eagles in 2023 and moving forward. I pretty much thought it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be back with the team. But ever since that report came out, it's been pretty quiet. No other news or any other reports really came out regarding CJ Gardner-Johnson and a potential contract extension with the Eagles, which you could take as a good or bad sign. But, I didn't think really anything bad of it. I didn't think it was a big deal that no big news was coming out. But now over the past few days, we started to hear rumblings that things might not exactly be what they seem, and maybe we should be concerned about CJ Gardner-Johnson potentially leaving the Philadelphia Eagles. And just a couple days ago, there was a report that came out from The Athletic that said the Eagles could potentially lose CJ Gardner-Johnson along with other big-name free agents if they're paid top dollar by other teams in free agency. And obviously I saw this report. I didn't really make any videos or talk about it all too much. I wasn't exactly worried by the report because I still felt like CJ Gardner-Johnson at the end of the day wanted to remain in Philadelphia, and I thought that the Eagles would be willing to pay him a large contract. And again, that conflicted with the other report that came out a couple weeks prior. So I was thinking, even though obviously that's a concerning report, I still wasn't too concerned about it. But then we arrived at yesterday, which was a very crucial date in the NFL because it was the deadline to franchise tag players. And obviously with the report coming out a couple weeks prior that if the Eagles weren't able to get something done with CJ Gardner-Johnson, they would franchise tag him, there was a lot of speculation as to whether the Eagles would end up using that tag on CJGJ. But as the day progressed, I think Eagles fans and people around the NFL started to realize that was not going to happen. And obviously the day went on, we got past 4 p.m. and nothing happened in terms of a franchise tag being placed on anybody, which means that CJ Gardner-Johnson now would be set to hit the open market on March 15th. And some people saw this and they were very worried, but that wasn't me. I was still really confident. I wasn't too worried about it, honestly. And that report that came out a couple weeks ago reassured me because what the report said was if the Eagles weren't able to get something done, then they would franchise tag CJ Gardner-Johnson, so maybe it just meant that since they didn't franchise tag him, they could have potentially agreed to something like a long-term deal behind the scenes that we just didn't know about yet. And if the Eagles were to franchise tag CJ Gardner-Johnson, it would have counted against the cap immediately next season. That $14 million that he would have been paid would go right against the cap, and it would hinder the Eagles' ability in potentially going out and re-signing some of their guys that they have that are about to hit free agency, or going out and adding new pieces to this team. So I still, even though obviously it was somewhat worrying, I was still confident that the two sides would reach an agreement at some point. And in fact, I was so confident that CJ Gardner-Johnson would be back with the team in 2023 that I even decided to come up here, sit in this very seat, and start making a YouTube short about that very topic. And you know, I finished up the video, I went downstairs, I turned on the Sixers game, and I started editing the short as I was watching the game. And I got to the point where while I was editing, I wanted to add the tweet of the report that came out a couple weeks ago. I wanted to add that to the video. So I went to Twitter and I went to go screenshot that tweet so I could edit it into the video. And little did I know the horrible things I would see when I made that decision. As I saw not one, not two, but 3 straight tweets talking about CJ Gardner-Johnson, all of them concerning and putting his future in Philadelphia in doubt. The first one said that the Eagles and CJ Gardner-Johnson's contract negotiations would be put in question by his quote-unquote true value. And I was like, okay, well that's obviously not great, but it could be worse, right? And then I see the next tweet and it says, CJ Gardner-Johnson has changed his TikTok bio from where it said Eagles safety to now it says NFL safety. Yeah, and obviously that wasn't great. And then I saw the next tweet, which had a screenshot of a tweet that CJ Gardner-Johnson had retweeted that said, thank you for everything, CJ Gardner-Johnson. Good luck wherever you go. And he had retweeted that and then quickly deleted it. And now I'm sitting here after reading those 3 tweets in utter shock, and I'm just flabbergasted at what I just read on my screen. And I was just so surprised by what I saw. I was so confident that CJ Gardner-Johnson was going to be back with the Eagles. I literally could not believe what I had just read. I literally was sitting there and I was like sinking into a slight mild depression. I just couldn't believe what I couldn't believe it. I was so confident, and now I'm seeing all this, and it just really kind of threw me off a little bit. It put me in a slightly bad mood, but still, I wasn't ready to accept defeat just yet. I still was continuing to think and trying to rationalize what I just saw and trying to find any sliver of hope that I possibly could. And you know, I thought maybe he's just using this as leverage. Maybe that's exactly what he's doing. Maybe he's realizing that maybe the Eagles don't want to offer him as much money as he initially wanted them to give him, and maybe he was just doing all this stuff as a potential move to give himself leverage and try to get more money out of the Eagles. So I was like, okay, you know what? This sucks, but I'm just gonna have to deal with it. And there's still a decent possibility, at least in my mind there was, that CJ Gardner-Johnson would be back with the team moving forward. And then I decided I'm gonna go up and try to get a good night's sleep for once. And as I'm about to go to sleep, I get a text from my friend. And the text says, bro, if CJGJ don't come back, I'm gonna be so mad. And I'm like, yeah, same, dude, it sucks. And then he's like, did you see his TikTok? And I'm like, I saw him change his bio from Eagles safety to NFL safety. And he's like, he posted a sad edit and it said, thank you, Philly. And now at this point, I'm sitting here like, I'm going through it at this point. So obviously I go to TikTok to check what's happened, and sure enough, there's this extremely sad, emotional edit of his time in Philadelphia with this really sad song playing in the background. I'll play the video on screen. I can't play the audio because of copyright reasons. And I saw it and I couldn't, it was so hard to watch. It was so hard to watch. Obviously, this does not look good. It really felt like a goodbye post. You know, I look at the comments, all the comments are like, please bro, don't leave. CJ, we love you, please stay. Philly loves you, you're perfect for Philly, don't leave us. And at this point, I'm just fighting, trying not to accept reality. So I'm scrolling through his other social medias. He's posted the video on all his other platforms. And I go on his Instagram comments and I start looking at those, and that just made it even worse for me. I see some Eagles players, Darius Slay comments. AJ Brown, this is the one that really, you know, it killed me, because he said, take care of your family, bro, you deserve it, which makes me think that he knows something that we don't. And you know, it just, scrolling through those comments just made everything worse. It really seems like CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to be leaving the Philadelphia Eagles and signing somewhere else this offseason in free agency. It's just sad. It's just sad because CJ Gardner-Johnson became one of my favorite players on the team in a short amount of time. I really liked what he brought to the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought he was perfect for the team, perfect for the city. He obviously was very productive on the field, but just the energy and the heart and that he brought to that Philadelphia Eagles locker room will surely be missed when he inevitably, it seems like, ends up heading somewhere else this offseason. And you know, obviously we don't know the whole story behind it. The Eagles probably decided that they don't want to pay the high price that CJ Gardner-Johnson is asking. We don't obviously know what that price is. If it was like $15 to $16 million per year, I would do it. If he's asking for around $20 million, I don't think you can really blame the front office or Howie Roseman or CJ Gardner-Johnson, because CJ Gardner-Johnson played well enough to earn that type of money. It'd just be hard, especially with the Eagles situation with the cap and all the players they got to re-sign, and Jalen Hurts' looming extension, to pay CJ Gardner-Johnson that high price tag. Okay, so I just finished recording the video, and now I see that just this morning, Adam Schefter was on the John Kincaid Show on 97.5 The Fanatic talking about the possibility of CJ Gardner-Johnson leaving or staying with the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is what he had to say.
Would you go CJ Gardner-Johnson too?
Yep, probably.
And what do you think he's going to command in the open market?
13 a year.
You think he's gone?
Yeah, that'd be my guess.
Wow.
So he said that CJ Gardner-Johnson would command around $13 million per season. I was just speculating on how much money he could potentially get. I was thinking it'd be somewhere from 16 to 20. Maybe I know nothing about NFL contracts, but $13 million per season does not sound like that much money. I know we can't pay everybody, but if you want to pay somebody, that's the one guy that I would pay. And Adam Schefter said he still sees the probability of it being that CJ Gardner-Johnson ends up leaving. Bro, $13 million, that's way less than I thought it was going to be. I would do that in a heartbeat. I mean, I'm not an NFL GM, but come on, man. Yeah, but I just thought, you know, my thought process, the Eagles went out, they made a move for CJ Gardner-Johnson knowing that he was going to be a free agent. I think that they thought they were going to be able to retain him. Maybe they didn't anticipate him playing as well as he did and earning the amount of money that he's going to end up earning, but CJ Gardner-Johnson could be a building block of this defense for years to come, and you don't get players that come along like this so often, especially since the Eagles got him for such a cheap price. They got him for a 5th and a 7th round pick. You brought him in here, and he turned into one of the best safeties in the NFL, and now for them to just let him walk after one short season, now you got to ask, what's the plan? You know, what's the plan on the defensive side of the ball? Is this just a year where you look and say, all right, we're going to lose a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, so maybe Howie Roseman's thinking we're going to build the defense through the draft, and you know, our defense is going to have a significant decrease in talent from last year, which I think was already a foregone conclusion that the Eagles were going to lose a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. But I also thought the Eagles were going to do everything they possibly could to bring back a couple of these key players, and I thought the number one priority for them was CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now clearly doesn't seem like he's going to be back. So I'm really just questioning what direction the Eagles are going to go, because, you know, both their safeties are free agents, both their starting linebackers are free agents, one of their top 2 corners is a free agent. So I'm just wondering what direction the Eagles are going to go when it comes to rebuilding that defense with talent. And, you know, I don't want to do what I've done in the past, because when I first started this channel, before I started this channel, in the early stages of it, I was the guy that was full fire Howie train. Like, I wanted him out of here. I probably was unwarranted. He built the Eagles for a Super Bowl winning team, and I became ungrateful, and I don't know how I could let myself do that. And now obviously he built the 2020 Eagles, which were able to get back to the Super Bowl. So at this point, no matter what he does, I can't really question it, and hopefully Howie does have a plan moving forward. I'm sure he does. So I don't want to be like sitting here ranting and saying that Howie Roseman sucks again, and like that they need to fire Howie. I don't want to be doing that. I need to learn from my mistakes. I'm not going to do that. But I do think that this would be a big loss. You know, nothing's official yet. Free agency technically hasn't started yet. Even though it seems like he's gone, we still have a week here where there's a slight, tiny glimmer of hope that you could somehow negotiate something within the next week. So Howie, I beg you, please do everything in your power to try to get a deal done. Although, if I'm being honest, I highly doubt it. I think CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to be gone, and it sucks. It really sucks. It's really seeming like, especially in 2023, the Eagles are going to rely heavily on their offense to win them games, because their defense is not going to be near talented enough to have the same sort of production that they were able to have last season. You have a new defensive coordinator. You might have to switch up the style of this defense and play a little differently and play a little bit more aggressive with so many inexperienced players just trying to play opportunistic, because this defense is going to lose a lot of talent. I had a fun video planned for today talking about potential stars the Eagles could make a play for this offseason, and now I got to push that back to tomorrow. But if you don't want to miss that video, you can go subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss it, and all the free agency coverage we got coming in the next week or so, and moving forward after that. Drop a like on this video to help push it out to other people. If you want to watch more Philadelphia Eagles content, you can go do that right here by clicking on this video. Yeah, pretty much all I got for this video, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.